All right, the undynamic duo. We're ready to go. Just got to work around everybody's schedule. There's Lindsay Randall.
And
Good
Dean,
to see you.
Great to see you too.
Yeah, getting back into the norm here.
Yeah.
Or abnorm, whichever one we like. So on this edition, and by the way, just want to remind everybody, go to our YouTube page. Everybody's been going to our page at Florida Daily to watch all the videos, which is great. But go to our YouTube page and like it, subscribe. Again, we don't charge anything. We don't send you a boatload of emails and blah, 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 and asking about information. Again, go to our YouTube page and like it at the Florida Daily Show. So today's going to be fun. I'm going to get to Jennifer Green from Liberty Partners, LLC, and Bob McClure, the president and CEO of the James Madison Institute. So here's the big story that was just kind of strange, Lindsay, because we talked about this all the time. So we're going to amp up on the whole on the property tax, remember? Mm-hmm. And then redistricting moved up a little bit quicker. And then it was about, okay, what's next? Special session. Property tax, no, then it's about the budget. Now we find out that the property tax issue might not even happen, according to reports out there, to June or July of this year.
That's so late. I mean, Number one, the legislature, the one thing that they have to do, the very one thing is the budget. So I get that. They have to do that. But now, the governor's been talking about property taxes for how long now? It's been, I feel like at least 6 months, longer than that.
At least a year, yeah.
Yeah, and there's no solid plan yet, Ed, unless I'm missing something, but there's been no solid plan. I've heard a lot of little hemming and hawing about different options, but I think it's kind of coming down to the wire, Ed.
Well, I'm with you. I think the plan is, and I'll get to with our panel here. I think the plan is not so much transparency. I think we kind of know what we need to get done, but there's not going to be much time for debate. I'm not even convinced that the state house or state senate are going to give him what he wants. And, ramrodded through voters, which again, I want some sort of property tax, but I want something from like a 7 to a 10, nothing like from a 3 to a 6. I don't want, if I can get $1, I don't want a dime. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Well, right. We want the best plan, to be put forward, but what is the plan? I have heard, a rumor was that, you don't want to release it until right beforehand so that, all the holes can't be poked in it. I don't know if that's actually accurate, and let's hope that there is a plan and we're just waiting to see it.
I know, I get it. So we're going to get right now. Let's get with Jennifer Green from Liberty Partners LLC and Bob McClure from the James Madison Institute. Jennifer, am I off on this one? I read this morning before you guys came on the radio show. We cover things at FloridaDaily.com and we hear things. And who in the world came up with, well, we may not even tackle this till July? I think you're telling me it makes more sense to look at this in June. Are they really talking about July before they address the property tax debate for special session?
I think everything's being thrown out. I think you say July. I think you could say December. I think you could say organizational session in November. It's, their next election cycle. I look, if they want to get it on the November ballot, they're going to have to do it soon. Whether it's before July 30th or 31st or after, I don't think it really matters unless there's a nexus between property tax and the budget. And I think what I said previously was the budget being having to backfill some of those more poor counties and loss of revenue that they might see from property tax cuts.
Bob, look at the analysis of this. Some people have said that if you wait, there'll be less scrutiny. Like Lindsay just brought up a couple of moments ago, less scrutiny on this. But that kind of is like a 50-50 catch-22. The pros and cons are, okay, people to go along with what you said. There's a property tax debate, but there's also, hey, people are kind of following some of this going, well, what are we not talking about the property tax debate that I may end up voting against here? So, I think we've been kind of robbed here, Bob McClure. We haven't had a real debate. I know we've had it on this show. We've had it on the radio show as well. So, Bob, if you're, as they say, Vegas betting odds, what do you still believe that something even worthwhile gets on the ballot this year?
Well, I'm not a gambler, but if I were to bet, Ed, I think they're going to absolutely put something on the ballot, pass something in a special session. I think there's also another component to this. This governor is a smart man, all right? There's a reason he hasn't kind of release every small detail ahead of any kind of special session. There's a couple of reasons. One, to Jennifer's point, if you release things early on, then people can just shoot holes through it for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, even people in your own party conceivably, right? But the second thing is pressure builds. So we've been talking about this, to Lindsay's point, for almost a year, and pressure builds to do something big. If you don't want a dime when you can get a dollar, if they come back with something small, then all of a sudden they're going to have to defend this when they go to the ballot box for the midterms in November. So I think really you could see a multiple of things. You could see something put on the ballot. You could see something passed by the legislature with the governor. And it could almost be a little bit of a blitzkrieg where they get a number of different things across the finish line. But the governor is holding his cards close to the vest for a reason. And I think it's to allow pressure to build. And then also, as any good elected official would do, is to reduce scrutiny to get something across the finish line. What that looks like, none of us on this show can divine. And I'm not sure they even know yet.
Well,
Jennifer, yeah, go ahead.
Well, this is the end of DeSantis's second term, unfortunately, because love our governor. But I think one of the things is this is like a capstone. This would be a capstone in his administration and for his legacy. And who knows what he's going to do in the future. So I think this is imperative that he gets it right, that he does it beautifully, that he does it, flawlessly. So I think you're completely right, Bob. I think that he's got to execute this beautifully. And hopefully we just don't see it yet because he's keeping his cards super close.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, the legacy, but, Jennifer, the state house hasn't pretty much, except for the redistricting, I mean, whatever that was, isn't pretty much giving anything to what the governor wants. You still got to get the state house, which has not been very friendly towards the governor, to go along with this.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and when you're talking about putting a constitutional amendment on the ballot proposed by the legislature, that's huge votes. I mean, we do have a supermajority with Republicans, at least. Yeah, hopefully we'll keep it. But right. I think it's got a long way to go. And I agree with Bob. Nobody knows what it's going to look like. I mean, and there's some things that are palatable. I said this previously. If you have a mortgage, do you really know what your property taxes are? I mean, it's escrowed in your mortgage. I don't write a check to my tax collector for my property taxes. Now, individuals that own their home or own, the dirt that they're on certainly do. But is that really what people are looking for to put some more money in their pocket? I'm not totally convinced this property tax.
So, hey, Bob, give me the logistics on this. Normally, when you want something that's a constitutional measure, you got to get the Florida State Supreme Court to go along with this. Just based on civics, that's what I know of, but he can't bypass the state Supreme Court based on the language, correct?
No, he can't. The legislature, it's just to our point here, it's so much up in the air. Are they even, I would imagine they would definitely put something on the ballot, but are they also going to pass something legislatively? And I think Jennifer brought it up at the very beginning. There's a budget yet to be passed, and that could play a role in all of this. And so really what we've done is taken a full deck of cards and thrown it up in the air, waiting to see if it, lands as, in some royal flush. And the answer is we don't have an answer. But I can tell you this, if they don't do anything, that is going to be really hard to defend in November. And I just don't think the legislature, regardless of what's going on with the House and the, perceived acrimony with the governor, I just don't think the legislature and the governor are going to let that happen. So I really think there's going to be something big and bold. There may be more than one measure. And I just don't think they can walk away and say, well, we didn't get it done. Vote for us anyway. That's going to be a real challenge in November if they do that.
And think about this. The only way left to put something on the ballot for this cycle, there's 5 ways. The only thing left is the legislature putting it on the ballot. So the pressure's on them, very much so.
Yeah.
Well,
I think, Bob, you made a great point about, you can't really pass a budget unless you know what this property tax bill is going to be or this amendment would be, because all of it goes hand in hand. It will affect the budget tremendously or not tremendously in case if they make a lot of cuts to the budget, maybe it just is a wash. But what's that going to look like? I don't know. But so I feel like you would have to do those kind of, simultaneously.
Well, and you've got the rural counties sitting out there wondering what's going to happen to their tax base. Look, I mean, we talked about it this morning. We at the James Madison Institute believe you just cap spending. The simplest way to do this is to cap spending, roll it back 2 or 3 years, and then index it to population and inflation. And then you don't tell local municipalities what they can spend it on. The voters will decide that ultimately for them, how they're going to spend it. But cap spending, roll it back, they get a de facto tax cut, reduction to the millage rate, and then index it to population and inflation. That to us, it's called a levy cap. And that's what we really think is the simplest and best way to do this.
Hey, Jennifer, what is, and I'll get Bob to jump in on this one. Let's say the speculation is until mid-June, July, they pass it. I'm sure there might even be challenges, like with the redistricting, there may be challenges to the verbal language. They've got to get a timeline to get this on the ballot, because absentee ballots, not in the primary, but for the general, start heading out in September of this year.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that there's something to certainly think about in terms of timing. You would think that there's an advantage to doing earlier, to have some time to talk about it, that for the legislature to talk and cheer and talk about how great this is. Then there's a flip side of it. Maybe don't give everybody a bunch of time to see what the amendment's going to look like in terms of what the words are they're going to be put in our Constitution.
Yeah, that's the reason why when Bob was going back to a conversation. I was like, wait, Bob, is it possible we may have one then more amendment on this issue?
Sure. I think you could have more than one. Absolutely, I do. I'm not a big fan of that because you clutter up the Constitution. And I'm also not a believer in give, one group a tax cut, but not the next group. Do something if you're going to come this far down the road. Do something big, do something bold, protect the rural counties, but get something done for every Floridian, not for retirees. Don't have anything against retirees, first responders, love first responders, but do it for everybody. Because otherwise you're going to have a hard time having that pass on the ballot. We talked about MPAs this morning. You're a 40-year-old MPA or you're a 25-year-old Republican or whatever, you're voting for a tax cut for a 70-year-old. I think it's going to be hard to get 60% on those kinds of things.
Do you want to know something, Lindsay? With you, especially in the charter school business, and Bob and, of course, Jennifer and myself know this heavily being involved with campaigning, even though these, and I'm assuming right now that the governor's not going to touch anything with education or fire and police. Again, that's an assumption. That's not going to stop the unions. That's not going to stop those of the left by saying, OMG, we're going to be cutting fire and police, first responders, and somehow they're going to dictate it with the schools. And I can tell you this right now, Lindsay, that I guarantee it, when you're out there with parents at the end of the school day, they're going to hear an ad. They're going to see something by a local article by one of the newspapers out there going, hey, Lindsay, I just read something that our charter schools and our school funding may be cut with this proposal by Governor DeSantis. Lindsay, you know what's going to happen.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, that's what the hysterics are going to come flying. So we'll just smile and nod and try to just, paint the picture how it is, which is that they're not going to touch that. There's no way that they would touch that. I mean, Florida is the education state. So I can't imagine that the legislature would ever try to do that. Definitely the governor won't because, he's been such a strong proponent.
Jennifer, let me go to the issue of redistricting. Was there kind of a surprise? Last week we had a story that came out where the original conversation was like maybe 1, maybe 2 seats, and that number bumped up to like 6. The governor went for 4. Was this all shocking, or are you surprised they didn't go any further? Anything about the district surprise you?
Not a whole lot. I mean, there were some images that were showing current districts that did look, they had these long fingers coming off of them. And I think it was 2 they used as an example of changing the district, being much more compact. But let's talk about this. The headlines that came out the day the governor came out with his proposal were Florida gains 4 Republican seats. Okay, I start thinking, are we talking about we just got 4 more? We got 28 plus 4? Okay, what state are we taking them away from? Because we have our max in the U.S. of all the congressional seats that we can have. It was more of a vote of performance, and to the point that we've talked about previously, you don't know what's going to end up, happening in the general election. I think people who are either Republican or Democrat or in that weird category of no party affiliation or independent, they might get out in the general election and go, bunk on this. Let's get this person out. Who knows?
Bob, I've heard people say that when you have this, that many of the districts become less competitive. It helps out in the fringes. I kind of get that argument. But when I look at seats that are now pretty much I'd have to assume these 4 seats that they're looking at would make them a little bit more competitive. But I mean, I got Republicans that, they don't want to win by 50+1. They want to win with 55, 60%. This way, that, more for notoriety, whatever. I mean, does it really make these other Republican districts that much into play?
Actually, I think it does. And I think, I have a contrarian point of view. I actually think the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling is good for African-American voters because now people have to compete for their votes, and Republicans and Democrats have to go into neighborhoods. Remember Donald Trump at the barbershop in the Bronx. Remember the McDonald's. Remember, the trash truck. Those were not just gimmicks on the part of Donald Trump. There's a reason he did that. He was going for the popular vote. He held a rally in California. He held a rally in Madison Square Garden. Why did he do that? Because he was going for the popular vote. Now, obviously, we don't have an electoral, college at the legislative, state or federal level, but you have to compete for votes. And I would argue that these majority-minority districts, actually eliminating them helps African Americans because now their voice must be counted. John Roberts said it best. How do you eliminate discrimination based on race? By eliminating discrimination based on race. And that's what we've done with these majority-minority districts. And it's going to help African Americans be heard even more so with their issues over time.
I kind of understand that. Even though Republicans for years drew up these, gerrymandered districts based on race, like Kareem Brown and Al Moss. I get it. I'm with you, Jennifer. Some of the news clips last week were like, I was like, what? Democrats going to spend 10 to 20 million on fighting the redistricting here in the state of Florida? But you said something on the morning show today that, and you're right. We always look at the prism of Republicans and Democrats, and yet there's that huge group known as NPAs that nobody seems to talk about on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the numbers we were talking about this morning, you go to 3 to 4 to 5 million. I mean, you have this no party affiliation or independent group that are growing so much, they're going to get pretty darn close to what, Democratic registration. And all it's going to take is, 1 million of them or even 500,000 of them to go either way. And it can make a huge difference in a general. That the question is, do they vote? Do they come out in a general election? Do they think I'm done? There's no reason for me to do this. But maybe they get mad enough. Maybe they get aggravated with both parties enough.
And I'll tell you, Lindsay, one of the things about the redistricting is I miss the good old days as a reporter where, some of the seats were very competitive, like 52-48. Maybe 3+ R's or 3+ D's where they made it the swing district, like Bob said. And I like the idea, for example, like even in school board races where I don't have to base it all on race. And Bob's got a good point where Republicans have to act like Republicans and talk to the other side. Democrats have to act like Democrats and talk to the other side and at least win for their vote on ideas. And by the way, Lindsay, in many cases, it kind of almost, in a weird way, stamps out all the crap that we've been hearing, like LGBT and transgender in sports, where now they sit back and go, OMG, I'm in a swing district. It's not very liberal. It's more moderate. I got to talk about real issues.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully it'll make people more honest with what they actually think and how they're going to govern. I'm not super optimistic only because I wasn't born yesterday. You see how people get into office and, absolute power corrupts sometimes. And a lot of times, absolutely. So, but I do hope that this will at least swing towards a more honest campaign and thoughtfulness of, what they're actually running on.
Yeah, I look at that with a lot of issues. Hey, Bob, on a different note, over the last week, I've been bombarded by the Florida Teachers Union. They've been wanting to, I'm on their emailing list, and they've been reaching out to me. I understand why with the largest show in the state, but I mean, literally, they must have hired 5 different PR groups. They wanted to set me up, and I just couldn't do it, through a little bit after surgery, rehab, and visiting with doctors. They wanted to schedule, and I almost did it if I had time. They wanted to schedule an interview, and everything they said was not spending enough money, isn't enough money in the budget this year. Everything was not enough, not enough, not enough. And I'm sitting here going, are you including charter schools and maybe private schools with that? And or if there are a fewer amount of students attending, and we're talking about Broward, Duval, other counties talking about consolidating schools, then why in the world are we asking for more money?
Well, I mean, I would argue, let's look at the results. I mean, do you want to spend more money or do you want results? Third grade reading scores up, minority reading scores up, graduation rates up. In any index, Florida is top 5 in the country and usually number 1 in the largest when it comes to the largest state. So they can't argue with the results. Marco Rubio said it best when he was Speaker of the House. He said, tell me how much is enough.
Right.
Tell me how much is
Good
enough.
point.
I'll fund it for 2 years as Speaker, and then we'll talk. Will that give you the results you want? That's what Marco said as Speaker. If you look at the protest that they had, the May Day protests over the weekend, and on Friday, and they're telling students to leave class. Do you know 1 in 4 kids? Only 1 in 4 kids in Chicago read it at grade level. 1 in 4. So it's about results, Ed. They can ask for more money, but what are you doing? And when you allow parents' choice and you allow competition, reading scores, graduation rates, every measure goes up. And oh, by the way, public schools get better. They don't get worse by and large.
Yeah, Jennifer, I wonder if I would have, we're going to do a story on it at Florida Daily, and I'll use some of the quotes from this interview, but they knew who I was, but I just found it interesting that, again, it was like, wait a second, Florida, even among Republicans, has spent, how many billions over 10 to 15 years on education, and for them to claim it's still never enough money.
Right.
I think it's up the food chain. You're talking about administrative level. I've got friends that have kids that are teachers or teachers themselves, long-term teachers, and it is abysmal what we're paying teachers. It really is. Well, maybe when you get to be a, assistant principal or principal or whatnot, that, jumps exponentially. But I would argue that's not the people that are improving our scores. It's the people that are front lines with these kids. Yeah.
Lindsay, you'd be surprised. Teachers that listen to the radio show, I get emails from them, and they will tell you that when it comes to teacher pay, Jennifer just said something. It's always the administrative level that gets the better end than the teachers. And it maybe you used to think back and go, well, wait, how many administrative levels do we need to have for certain positions? We don't need the whole crap of DEI. I remember when I was in high school, I went to a public and private school, but yet if the principal wasn't there, the assistant basketball coach was your principal. Just to make sure they got to call your parents.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and also you have to think not just like on the school side, but also the district side. So there's giant buildings in each of these districts that have a lot of people working for them, a lot. Yeah. And how many people does it really take to run these giant institutions? And I get that they're, billions of dollars worth essentially of an organization. However, at my charter school, we get less funding. Our charter schools get less funding than a regular public school. However, we have to be a lean, mean machine. And so we have a very limited amount of admin because we want it to go to the students. We want it to be them to be directly impacted. And that is by getting more resources to them, more additional, reading tutors, et cetera, and not just classroom teachers. So all of that goes into it. But, I think the big problem is when it becomes about the adults in the room, which unfortunately, I think the unions are all about the adults in the room, then you've lost your way. And this should be about the kids. And this is about saving the country. And this is about saving ultimately Western civilization. And we've just lost that completely.
Bob, I was stunned to even see, I remember a couple of years ago about the debate about school closures, which, has been around for a while. I'm glad they're happening because we don't need, 4 schools in a parameter of a 6-mile radius and, moving to one area. I was stunned that even some of these districts were going further down the road. I thought I would have seen more opposition, and originally there was, but to see some of these school closures to consolidate, I got to tell you something. I support it. I'm just surprised it happened this quick.
Well, it really kind of depends on which area of the state and which local municipality you're in. I mean, Jennifer will tell you we're having that debate here in Tallahassee about school closure, and there are a couple of schools at 60% capacity that our superintendent does not want to close, and so he's going to the county to increase taxes. So not fully understanding the rest of the state, we're seeing that happen, but there are other ways to use those schools. Allow charter schools to use the other 40% of the school that's not being used, retrofitting them for other possibilities. I mean, we have this kind of entrepreneurial spirit in the education world. Lindsay knows now. And the funding component is going to central planning. It's not going to the teachers. If you look at the numbers, Ed, central planning, the bureaucracy, and the administrative track are increasing exponentially, whereas teacher and teacher pay is not increasing as it should. So cut central planning, cut the bureaucracy, cut the administrative track, and pay teachers. But allow these teachers and these parents to become entrepreneurs and use some of these schools that aren't at full capacity. Allow the charter schools to use those facilities.
Turn them into manufacturing facilities.
Sure.
We've seen that a lot with former schools. Put them somewhere, make it a VOTEC type
trade
thing.
schools.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. It's Jennifer, just before I get going, it's still quite interesting to see how that some of these school districts are still the largest employer in several of these counties.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right. Jennifer Green, Liberty Partners LLC, and Bob McClure from the Madison Institute. And both of you, I enjoy having you come on the radio show, and I enjoyed having you come on today to fill in and talk about a lot of issues. Thanks for coming on, Jennifer. Bob, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks. Bye,
Bye,
Lindsay.
y'all.
Yeah.
Lindsay.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
See you, Bob.
Yeah, and then Bob and of course Jennifer and all these coming on, and I love hearing their perspective they have. And those two, I could talk. I've had those two on radio, and ratings just go through the roof. And I could have them on. I could talk about all of these debates and all of these issues on education, and we'll talk more as the governor's already signed the redistricting bill. We'll talk about that and a whole host of other stuff. But Lindsay, good to see you.
You too, Ed. Looking great.
Well, that I know.
Now it's time to return the favor.
Is my
Come
dude
on.
right? Oh, come on, Lindsay. We know you're always looking great, all right? I mean, give it the fact of the hair. So anyway, all right. Don't forget, go to our YouTube page, like it, subscribe to it. Everybody's been going to the website, which is fine. Watch all of us. That's great. We don't charge anything. We don't ask we don't see any information on that kind of stuff. But Lindsay, we'll keep kicking them out this week on the Florida Daily Show.
Sounds great.
We'll do another one right here. I'm for Lindsay Randall. I'm Ed Dean.